You are watching Lesson 7 for continuing students of the Dance of the Eye and the Hand. Today we'll introduce the 8 relationships in Chinese painting theory and focus on host and guest and solid and void.
Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to move on from having spent 2 weeks on the 6 methods to beginning the next 4 weeks looking at the 8 relationships. And this is the model we'll use for that. It's available in your packet. There are 8 pairs of relationships. They're dualities, starting with host and guest, void and solid, spacey and density, gathered and scattered, open and close, dark and light, dry and wet, black and white. And before we start the calligraphy today, we'll look at some examples of some landscape painting and basically give you an opportunity to start with the first 2 of these, host and guest and void and solid, and see if you can decode the painting to see how many different ways just those 2 concepts are used in those paintings. So you can start to understand how all of these concepts are basically embedded in almost every single Chinese painting. That there are things that you are looking at, and again, this is to take up the void for not having Western single point perspective as a guiding principle, and instead having moving perspective, having focused on the qi and on the structure, and then here we'll start looking at pairs of opposite concepts like void and solid, light and dark, to organize the composition of a painting. But this week we'll just start with the first 2, and then we'll go by pairs for the following 3 weeks and continue to explore how these are all embedded in a Chinese painting. So let's start by looking at the examples I'm providing here, and then we'll do some calligraphy. Let's get started.
In this album painting by Shen Zhou, how many examples of the relationships of host and guest and void and solid can you find? It's a pretty simple composition, but see what you can find. Host and guest. What is a major element and what elements are subservient to it? What are the areas where the void is allowed to be empty and the brushstrokes define a solid? Here's another example by Shen Zhou. A little more complicated. We have trees, groups of trees, we have rocks, we have mountains, we have dots, we have a figure, and we have the empty places. How many ways can you see the concept of host and guest being used? What are the relationships? What are the hierarchies? What about solid and void? Where has the brushwork been used to create a cluster or a density? Where has it been not used to allow it to be open? Take a look. And another example. Here are 2 panels, even more complex. Spend a little time. What's the host? What's the guest? Even within a host, is there a host and a guest? What clump of trees are the guest? What clump of trees are the host? Even in the host clump of trees, what is host and what is guest? Even in the host tree, what branches are the host and the guest? Take your time, look at the whole composition. Same with solid and void. Where is solid used to create an emptiness, whereas void used to create a sense of solidity. And one last example, again, a far more complex collection of elements. Where is the host and where is the guest? In the trees, in the rocks, in the water. Where are the solids and how do they create the void? Where is the void and how does that create the solid? Where is the host and the guest in the solids? Where is the host and the guest in the voids? Spend some time with it. Take a close look. How would you construct the composition? What haven't you noticed before that you notice now?
So as we did with 6 methods, we're going to want to lay this out as a complete calligraphy composition. So we'll have 8 pairs of characters. I want to leave some room here and some room here for my date and name. Again, I'm using my detail brush, the smaller of my 2 brushes. You could do it with this brush. It'll be a challenge to keep it small, or I might increase the size of the paper. I get my brush wet, use my mixing dish to wick off the excess paper ink, and dry it a little bit, pick up some ink, go back to the dish, carefully, calmly, slowly, working it into the brush, using my testing sheet to see what I have. It's a little bit loose. In a detail brush, I don't need too much, but it needs to be well mixed. I need to have a good point. So to start, I'm going to put the first pair about here. We're starting with host and guest. In that pair, starting with horizontal, another horizontal, and a wave. Down to left, pressing a little bit, lifting, pressing, lifting, and then a vertical that goes all the way through. So this relationship is about one element having dominance over another element, and it can be host to guest in rocks, in trees, in elements to each other, or branches within trees, leaves within branches. You can continue to break it down. So that's host, then guest, starting with a short vertical, horizontal connects to vertical, a dot, another horizontal, another dot, vertical, and then down to right, and this long down to left wave stroke, which is unusual to have a wave going down to left. And those of you who are right-handed will have more of a challenge of that than those of us who are left-handed. Build a box, divide it twice inside, close it, and then a simple down to left, down to right, and that's our first pair. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, I'm on track. Second column is void and solid. I start with a horizontal, and then again this roof structure, a second horizontal, and connect with vertical. Then vertical connects to horizontal, vertical, second vertical, and horizontal and vertical. And then under that we have a wave stroke. Down to left, a little bit of a press, moving, pressing, lifting. So that is void. character for solid starts with this roof structure again, only it becomes a box in this case. Add my dot, close the box, and then around that, and this you got to watch carefully, is horizontal connects to down to left connects to horizontal that extends beyond. And in tiny there is a dot that crosses that horizontal. So you might want to stop and look closely at that. Under that, we then have another box, horizontal, connects to vertical, two horizontals within, and then it closes. And this one also ends with a down to left, down to right. And paying attention to the subtle differences between that down to left and down to right. Difference in attachment here, this one's attached, this one isn't. Angle, width, length, and direction. So that is our calligraphy lesson for this week. We'll start with these two. I would encourage you to take this farther and use the examples, the landscapes, if you want to try one or two of those. And as you're painting it, just being aware of where are the relationships of host and guest, where are the relationships of solid and void, and see if that can give you a little deeper understanding of all that's embedded in a simple Chinese landscape. Let's give that a try.
Before you go, one last note. The handouts for the Dance of the Eye and the Hand for beginning students and continuing students, all lessons, are posted as downloadable PDFs at www.laughingwatersstudio.com. Have a good day. You have been watching Distance Learning from Laughing Waters Studio.